Hello, and it's so nice to be back to you with you after the festival of Pesach. It's hard to believe that Passover was just a week ago, actually less than a week ago, the past Sunday. If we have sound, please confirm, send me a message and let me know that the sound is on. But it's so hard to believe that just a week ago was, let me see the comment. Can't hear you. Why can't you hear me? I'm unmuted. Let me put on the check here. Yes, sound is working. Great. Okay, thank you, Arlene. Now I can go and continue this a little bit with ease. So, as I mentioned, it's hard to believe, that Pesach is just about a week ago. But here we are. Things have got settled down. However, this week, although we have gotten away from the hustle and bustle of Pesach, over the last few days, we are involved in reading so many stories about the Holocaust, about survivors and hardships. So it's still a pretty heavy message that we have to absorb within our own lives. So today I'm sorry, I'm dealing with allergies, so forgive me my hoarse voice. So I like to talk about this idea about moving on from Pesach. How do we move on from Pesach? Do we have to move on from Pesach, from Passover? How do we absorb or learn and incorporate the message of the Holocaust into our own personal lives? It seems like the people on Facebook cannot hear me. Oh, I could hear you. Okay, good. Matche, your message. Anyway, so we talk about the idea of moving on from Pesach. Now, there are many hardships of Pesach, not being able to eat all the wonderful, delicious breads and pizzas and cookies and cakes. And those are things that there's no problem. Let it go behind you. It's only for 7 days and you move on. But they're the beautiful things of Passover. They're the messages of Passover, the liberating messages of Passover. Those are not things that we want to move on from. Those are things that we want to take with us, because that's really what a holiday is all about. That's really what the Yontif is all about. Not the challenging parts of it, but the challenging parts of there are there to help us direct and focus on the meaningful message. So what do we make of Pesach? What do we make about all this conversation about the Holocaust, the survivors, those who did not survive? So as always, we have the timely messages from our timeless Torah. We can always look to the message of the weekly reading of the Torah about what's going on in the Jewish calendar. Because although these things were established ages ago, thousands of years ago, it's incredible how the message is always fresh and always relevant if you just open up yourself to listen to its messages. And this Shabbat is a very special Shabbat because it's really a Shabbat that focuses on the transition from the euphoric or the excitement of a festival, of a Passover in this case, into kind of grounding ourselves in everyday life. Tomorrow in the synagogue, we'll be reading the portion of Shemini. We will also be blessing the new month. So although we had a great month on the Jewish calendar called Nisan, which is a month of miracles, which we celebrate the ultimate miracle, perhaps, the Exodus, the liberation, the splitting of the sea. Now we move on to a different month in the Hebrew calendar called Iyar. This coming Monday and Tuesday. And on this Shabbat, we bless the new month. So there's two important elements of this weekend that we should focus upon. One is the portion of the Torah, Shemini. The other is the idea of a Rosh Chodesh, a new beginning a new month, and in this case, the month of Iyar. One of the highlights of Shemini, of the portion, are the laws of kosher. And the laws of kosher are very misunderstood. And I'm not going to delve now about all the intricacies of the laws of kosher. I'm going to talk about on a broader sense. When people say, I'm kosher, or I'm not kosher, and they start talking about an idea that seemingly is about food. Food is either kosher or not. We don't say I'm kosher because I eat kosher. I keep kosher, but that's not what makes me kosher. What makes me who I am is my soul. and my neshama, and that is part of everything I do beyond just the mitzvah of kosher. So this idea of, they say this joke, a fellow comes to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, I've got good news. I've decided that in the house, I'm going to be absolutely kosher. When I eat out, I won't be so kosher. The rabbi said, that's great, because now I know that your dishes are definitely going to heaven. But you, we'll see. And this idea of I'm kosher, and what does it mean? How do we make it into a very personal idea? And then, of course, we have the month of Iyar. The month of Iyar is a month of transition. The month of Iyar is the only month on the Jewish calendar that every day has a mitzvah. And the mitzvah is different than any other mitzvah. It is to count the time. We don't have any mitzvah to count the day of Shabbat. We observe the seventh day as Shabbat. We don't have a mitzvah to count the 15th day of, let's say, the Hebrew month of Nisan. The mitzvah is on the 15th day of Nisan, you observe Passover. However, in this month of Iyar, every day is a mitzvah, and the mitzvah is count the day. Today is this amount of day, tomorrow is the next amount of day. What is this really all about? So I'm going to start with the discussion of the Iyar, of the counting. We'll move back to this idea of what makes a person kosher, and then a very important message in how I personally choose at this moment to deal with the issue of the Holocaust in a very meaningful, personal way. So let's start with this Iyar business. So what's it really all about, the counting? So I'll tell you what it's all about. Just once this fellow, old saying, it was at the end of his life, and he says, looking back at his life, he said, I made a big mistake. When I started out as a teenager, a young adult, when I went to school, I thought I am going to change the entire world. The world is messed up, and I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to change it all. After a while, I realized that, I can't change the whole world. Let me try to change my country. And after many years, I realized I can't change my country. I vote every 4 years, every 2 years. That's all I can do. But I can change my own environment. Let me try to change my family. Let me try to change my friends. And then as I really got to my later years, I realized I can't change anyone. So maybe I should just change myself. And at this point, it's a little too late. And this is what he says. Had I gone the other way around, had I started out focusing on changing myself, then I would have had the ability to help others change. And then I could have maybe helped more people change, and maybe bring change into the country, and maybe even change the world. But it all has to begin with changing ourselves. See, we just observed Passover. Passover is a great miracle of God. Perhaps one of the greatest miracles of all time. Not perhaps, the Exodus of Egypt and the splitting of the sea. Amazing stuff. But it was done by God. And in fact, it said not only the waters of the sea split, but all the waters in the world split. The entire world was transformed by God. In a few weeks, we're going to celebrate Shavuot, where God reveals himself on Mount Sinai. And it's the greatest revelation of all time. God descends on Mount Sinai and is revealed to all of humanity. The entire world is transformed at that moment by God. The thing is that between these two bookends of great, miraculous, world-transforming miracles is a period of 7 days where there aren't great transformative things happening by God. What's happening is perhaps greater because of things that happen by ourselves. This is the time we focus on changing ourselves, on reflecting on ourselves. What is our life about? Who am I? What are my capabilities? What am I truly capable of doing? And when I'm able to really get a handle of the talents that God gave me to make a change in my life, then we are ready to receive the Torah, to use it to make even greater changes in the world. And that's the important message of this coming month of Iyar. There's no Hanukkah, there's no Purim, there's no Passover, there's no Shavuot, there's no Rosh Hashanah. There aren't these fantastic holidays where we celebrate the great miracles of God. There's a consistent daily activity of counting our time in this world understanding our own capacity to function within this context of time and space, so that we have a healthy understanding of who we are, so we can then take the Torah and move forward. And this is why this is such an important time. But how do we transform ourselves? What are we meant to focus on? If you study Kabbalah and you look at the deeper spiritual Hasidic teachings, every day of the month deals with a different facet of your personality. But I'd like to simplify it. And we simplify this with the meaning of the portion, the laws of kosher. Now, we always talk about kosher in the most broadest sense about a kosher animal. And the Torah teaches us this week what makes an animal kosher. And basically, what makes an animal kosher is if the animal has split hooves and chews its cud. Anything else in the laws of kosher, it's all about a derivative if the source of this food comes or incorporates an ingredient from a non-kosher animal. But the heart and soul of kosher are the symbols. The laws of kosher are the symbols of what makes an animal kosher. Now, it's a very beautiful teaching in the Tanya, the very basic teaching of Hasidic philosophy. And that is that we each have an animal within us. We are a composite of an animal soul and a godly soul. But what makes our animal kosher? So let's look at what makes an actual animal kosher and see what makes our life kosher. What is the significance and the symbolism in the split hooves and chewing the cud? So the Rebbe explains this in a very beautiful way. The hooves of an animal are always on the ground, but they're split, one side and the other side, and they both give the animal stability. The splitting of the two things teaches us an important lesson, that although we have many parts of life and many things that keep us grounded, we must have clear boundaries. We must have clear borders within our hooves, within our life. There's the spiritual, there's the material, and we spend a lot of time dealing with the materialistic aspects of life, and we need to. We're human beings. We have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to go to work, we have to do many things that may appear not to be spiritual or holy. But that doesn't mean we don't have the clear times that we need to designate to our holiness. We have to understand what is holy and what is not holy. And hopefully when we understand the boundaries between the two, each one remains pure. When we are at work, we are at work. But when we are meant to develop our holy feelings, it is real. Our spirituality is as real to us as our need to go to work and make a living. One doesn't negate the other. It's two parts of the same hoof, but both are necessary parts. One of the most beautiful stories of a chassid that I loved is a story of a chassid whose name was Reb Binyamin Kletzker. And he was a lumberjack. He had a big lumber yard. And he had a huge business. And one year came the end of the accounting. And right at the end, after pages and pages of the financials, the P&Ls, whatever they would call it back then, when it came to the grand total of profits, he wrote 3 words in Hebrew, Ein od milvado. There's nothing but God in this world. And his accountant looks at him and says, listen, Rebbe Binyam, I know you're a spiritual Jew. I know you're a holy Jew, but this is business. Business is business. Keep your faith and your God holy, important, but don't mix it in. We need to know numbers. And Binyamin turned to him with a very important reality that we all deal with. He said, what don't you understand? If I can think about my material matters while I'm praying and involved in spiritual matters, why can't I bring my spiritual matters into my materialistic affairs? And obviously, he was trying to bring up a point. And this is the point of the split hooves. Both are very real. We know that if we don't go work and we don't have the money, we won't have food to put in our bellies. It's real. But we also need to know that together with that, not in place of that, but together with that, there's the other side of the hoof. That if we don't nourish our souls spiritually, if we don't learn and absorb the spiritual messages of Torah, we will also be lacking. That's how we tame, so to speak, our inner animal. That's how our inner animal becomes kosher. But there's one more sign. That is the kosher animals chew their cuds. Although they digested the food, they regurgitate and chew it again. And then the idea of this in our taming our animal is to be focused. We live in a society that everything's instant. We got to do it, move on. Get it done, bring it in, move on. We don't have time to focus. Tame your inner animal and focus on the important things of life. We all know what's very important in life, but sometimes we get so distracted. Remain focused and constantly keep focused on what's really important. If we can have our own spiritual split hooves and chewing our spiritual cud, we will make our inner animal very kosher. And when our inner animal is kosher, we will be very focused, very inspired and encouraged to move forward with a purposeful and meaningful life. We will have created that inner transformation within us, which is what ER is all about, and really be prepared to be healthier, spiritual, healthier people as we receive the Torah and move on in our life. So next time you think about kosher meat, don't just think about the meat and the butcher. Think about what that means about your inner animalistic drives, to be able to remain focused as we are on our materialistic drives, as our spiritual drives as well. That is the inner transformation that takes place. And the reason I think this is such an important message, because the last few days, I've been reading so much about Holocaust survivors. It's been established as the Yom HaSha'ah, the day that we remember the survivors, and the day we remember the Holocaust. But as you read the story and the unfortunate tragedies that happened during the Holocaust, you also read the stories about those who survived the Holocaust. No doubt that the Holocaust is the dark stain in our history. No doubt it's not just even the darkest time of our current history, but it's dark beyond dark. So many Jews have been taken and killed mercilessly. But there's another aspect to the story that I have been noticing, and somehow this year has shifted the focus. And not only about remembering all those who perished, but also being in awe of those who survived, those who witnessed the greatest atrocities that human beings can bring on one another, yet found within them the spark of hope, light, and faith to rebuild, to become better people, and to make other people better. Of course, their lives were scarred forever. But you read about the survivors of the Holocaust and how they started fresh with literally without shirts on their backs and rebuilt themselves. And through rebuilding themselves, built families. And through families, rebuilt a Jewish world. That is the miracle of the Holocaust. And that is something that we need to remember as well. The ability to look through tragedy and to be able to find even a little shred of light and focus on that light. Chew that cud. Keep holding onto that light more and more and more, and have the split hooves. Don't allow that light to be swallowed into darkness. But what's dark is dark. What is light is light. You hang on to the light and you can get through anything. And this is the question that I ask. Have you met a survivor? Do you know a survivor? I've met so many survivors. And of course, you see in the survivors a lot of pain. But you see a certain enthusiasm, a certain excitement of life, a life that was almost snuffed out of them. But that little that was left gave them the ability to relive, not only within themselves, but because they lived within themselves, were able to bring life to so many others. And don't get me wrong with what I'm about to say, but we can learn from the Holocaust and what we have gone through over the past year. And of course, you can't compare the two. And you gotta be crazy to even think that the two are compared. But one thing I found as I'm reading the stories that was very similar, beyond the human pain and suffering and tragedy of the Holocaust, there's something there. People took life for granted. People lived their life as established, their homes, their families, their businesses, and they couldn't even imagine that all this reality would be taken away from them. but it was. And what was taken away from them was never rebuilt. What was rebuilt was something new and something fresh. We went through that about a year ago. Again, not on the same level, of course, but in a sense. And we always have to learn, even from things that are greater than ourselves, we have to apply it to ourselves the way we can. So though we can't compare what we went through to a Holocaust, God forbid we should ever do that, but doesn't mean we can't learn the messages. What happened last March is our lives stopped. Everything we planned, so many plans and ideas, it didn't just stop. The whole perspective of how things run changed drastically. And we're not going back to the way things were pre-COVID. That doesn't mean we will rebuild our lives and whatever was lost or disturbed in stronger and better ways. But that's what happened to us. The world, in a sense, was reset. And this is the question, the challenge to us. Are we going to learn from the survivors that survived greater tragedies than ours? How to look at the positive. So much pain and suffering in our lives happened mentally, psychologically, personally. People lost businesses, people lost relationships. It's just such upheaval, emotional and mental, not physical like in the Holocaust, but emotional and mental. And the question is, are we going to allow the darkness to overshadow the rays of light? Or are we going to look at that survivor who went through so much more than we did and still found it within them to find that ray of light and to rebuild and to become a better person, a stronger person, so they can in fact make the change in the world? This is something we should think about over Shabbos as we bless the month of Iyar, which focuses on personal transformation. As we read about the story of all these survivors, what personal transformation is taking place in your life now, in my life? What am I focusing on? What am I going to focus on from my experience over the last 14 months? I hope for me, and I'd like to inspire for you as well, focus on the things that were positive, the values that you found are more meaningful now that a lot of things needed to be reset. And if the Holocaust survivor was able to take that thin shred of light and become who they are, we absolutely can all become better people. We could become kosher people. And kosher people does not mean necessarily people who keep kosher, although, of course, that's our mitzvah. But kosher people are people that have a healthy attitude about who they are, what they need to do, and what needs to get done. So, my dear friends, I want to wish you all a good Shabbos. Or, as my mother taught me earlier today, that already this Shabbos, we wish each other a good Chodesh, a good new month, which will hopefully be in a few days. A good new month, not just another month that there's no holidays, there's no Passover, no Shavuos, so just take it easy, but a good new month that is productive, meaningful, and inspirational, so that when we come to that moment, we realize that we did capture the moment to become better people. And by becoming a better person, we're able to change things around us. And by changing things around us, make the impact that we all try to make. So I want to wish you all a wonderful Shabbos, a meaningful Shabbos. And as we move on from Pesach into the spring and summer, we're now preparing a host of new programs, which will be a hybrid of in-person and virtual as things are transitioning. Stay tuned for all the wonderful and exciting things coming up. But for now, we count each day. And today is Erev Shabbos. Today we focus on this meaning of transformation. So, my dear friends, as always, before we sign off, we allow people who are able to want to wish good Shabbos to others. You can just click in, type it on your computer on Facebook or YouTube on the bottom, apparently. Here we have, let me get the right messages. Okay, Judy Feiner is wishing everyone a good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, Judy. Arlene Howard, good Shabbos. And Rosh Chodesh. Thank you for my pleasure. They have helped me get through this past year. Trust me, Arlene, it helped me get through this past year as well. So if those are the messages of good Shabbos, we will now sign off. Let me just give this one more second. Here you go. The comments. Harris Abrams. Shabbat Shalom to one and all from Karen and Harris. Good Shabbos to you. Here we have Howard. Howard Burnine wants to wish everyone have a good Shabbos. Good Shabbos to you, Howard. Layla, good to hear from you. Good Shabbos to all. Regards to the family, to your mishpacha, to everybody. Here we have, Sherry. Nice to hear from you. Good Shabbos, everyone. Good Shabbos to Sherry. And I think we will give this another few seconds. Otherwise, we will now sign off and wish everyone the wrong one. I wish everyone a wonderful Shabbos and see you next week at 5 p.m. in Ritz Hashem on Friday evening. Bye-bye.